nothing more to this wonderful year. To honor we call you, not press you like slaves. For who are so free as the sons of the waves? Heart of oak, heart of oak, for our men.
Hello!
Always are ready.
Look at this! I found the scabbard! Last time I was here, somebody taken my scabbard and left me nothing but a baseball bat. And we hadn't even invented baseball at the time. But now my scabbard has the blood of dozens of men upon it. I've been fighting the bloody British. I've been fighting the bloody Spanish. And most of all, I've been fighting the bloody French, the worst of them all. More men than I can remember have fallen to their deaths at the hand of this scabbard. I have scars, battle scars to be sure, but nothing like what I've subjected those devils to. So let me tell you, I've come to shore for one reason and one reason only: to meet and the women. That's two reasons. Well, anyway, don't confound me. And while I'm here, they said I've got to do something. What? I said, kill more men! Yes, I'll do it gladly. And they said, no, put your scabbard back in the scabbard thing, the sheath. And I said, what is it? Drinking women! They said, no, not that either. You were going to do that anyway. And I said, what? And they said, we want you to teach psychology. And I said, blasted psychology, what is it? And they said, you'll figure it out, it's pretty creative. And I said, okay. But the first thing we've got to do is shut these bloody troubadours up. I've had enough sea ballads for a lifetime and 10 more. So, with that in mind, what we shall do is we shall begin with psychology. And what are we going to talk about today? What are we ever going to talk about today? Hello, by the way. Let me just get this organized over here. There we go. Push the unfreeze. High-tech pirate. Unfreeze, I say. Unfreeze. Still freeze. Frozen. Stop. I don't know why it's not working. Work. I command you. Are the batteries bad? What's going on? Sorry. There we go. I guess the batteries are a bit dodgy. Alright, anyway, guys. Hello. Welcome to psychology. I'm so glad I got my scabbard. You don't know how insecure a pirate feels without a scabbard. Anyway, guys, so what we're going to do is... Oh, look, there's a cord in the way. Blasted cord in the way. What's going on with that? Get that out of there. Alright, so what we're going to do is we are going to talk about the Multistore Memory Model. Remember, this is cognitive psychology, and I've been promising all along that we are going to... I can keep my hand on here. Don't mess with me. Don't mess with me. Anyway, so we are going to talk about the Multistore Memory Model. We're going to start talking about memory, which is a huge and very important part of the cognitive psychology criterion, or the coursework curriculum is what I'm trying to say. And so we're going to talk about this. Now, basically, so people have been trying to figure out memory for a long time. What is our memory? How does it work? Why is it faulty? In which cases is it not faulty? Do we really remember things how they really are? And the important thing for you to remember is memory is a reconstruction of events. We don't have a videotape in our head. There's no way that we actually know that our memories are true. These are subjective beliefs that we have about an event that has transpired. So subsequently, if we don't know if our memories are true, then how do we know that the events that we think happened in the way that we think they happened? And you can get your head around that for a few minutes, but it's a very good question. So psychology, this is important because we base very much of our behavior upon our memories. The way you think about things creates your identity, or the way you think about things that have happened creates your identity, or your likes, your dislikes, your goals, your aspirations, people you like to hang around with, and so on and so forth. It's very tied up to the memories of who you are as an individual and what experiences that you have had.
And everybody's had that experience where you sit in a room with someone and you both experienced an event and you talk about it and say, no, it didn't happen this way. And you're like, yes, it did. And they're like, no, no, yes, no, yes. Very often this happens with brothers and sisters. And you both are absolutely convinced you're right, and no, you both can't be right. You can both be wrong, you both can't be right. And this is kind of an interesting thing. So we're trying to get a map of our memory. We're trying to figure out exactly how the memory works and how it looks and so on and so forth. And there's probably no model that is perfect. This is one of the earliest models, and this is called the Multistore Memory Model. You have to know what this is. Then remember, I've told you a zillion times, I'll tell you when you have to know stuff. This is, you have to know stuff. This is this. Okay? And so, anyway, so here's kind of a graphic of it. And there's problems with this model, but we'll get to those problems later. We'll talk about the model first. It's pretty intuitive. Anyway, so what happens is here, if you're going over to the I'm going to put it over here. Here we go, above the palm tree. Here we go. So you should be able to see it over there. Anyway, I'm not sure how well this is going to show up on this screen with the new color scheme that I did on it. So we'll see. And I'll I'll have the graphics come up over here accordingly. If it doesn't work very well on the video editor, then I'll put it up over there. But anyway, this one's going to go up over there. So first of all, you have environmental stimuli. That's everything. Everything in the world around you. Now, you can't go around attending to everything in the world around you. If you did, you would go insane. We have a filter in our brains which filters out the insignificant stuff like the birds in the trees or how many leaves and flowers and color of people's shoes. I mean, you don't go around looking at every single solitary thing that you can think of and attending to it. You just can't do that. We don't have the capacity. And anyway, okay? Then we have a system called the sensory memory. I'm going to talk about each of these individually, okay? And the sensory memory is basically, this is pretty insignificant for psychology. I don't know of many studies that study sensory memory because we never really actually are cognitive aware of our sensory memory. So they really don't have any sort of bearing in cognitive psychology. The sensory memory is the kind of memory which you don't even really actually think about, but it helps you navigate your environment. You go around and you don't run into the people you see. Now, if I asked you, if you walked through a store and I asked you, what color was that guy's shirt, what color, you wouldn't even, afterwards you passed 27 people, name the color of the type of pants they were wearing or whatever. You wouldn't even be able to do it. But very likely you probably never ran into any of them. You just kind of have a sort of navigational memory from 1 millisecond to another millisecond that kind of gets you around. You don't attend to it, but it's kind of there as a sort of framework. So that's kind of what it is. It's fairly insignificant, okay? But anyway, so here comes the important part. It's actually there. The part that you see is attention. Attention. This is important. It's the first step of actual memory like we think of. Now you hear your teachers or whatever say, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention to your parents, pay attention, pay attention. Well, they want you to remember something. And if you don't pay attention, you're never going to remember it because it never gets into the system. So attention is a very, very important sort of step. But then it comes into something called a short-term memory. The short-term memory is very important for psychology. It's been studied extensively. Lots of studies that I will go over about short-term memory. Very likely when you do your experiments for the internal assessment, not necessarily very likely, but it is very possible that you will do one on short-term memory. Okay? But anyway, and so that is a short-term memory store. And we're going to look at the details of it in a second. I'm going to go over it briefly right now. But basically, the short-term memory is plus or minus, it's like 30 seconds long at the very most, and you can remember about 7 items plus or minus 2. And so, like when somebody tells you a phone number, like, 425-555-1718, 425-555-1718, 425, and you say that in your head again and again and again and again and again. Well, what you're doing is basically that. You're doing maintenance rehearsal. You're keeping that number fresh in your short-term memory because you only have 30 seconds. You want to write it down or put it in your phone or whatever the case is. You want to put it in there, and so you want to get it logged into something before you forget it. So the repetition of it just keeps it fresh in the short-term memory there. Okay? then we'll go on, there's something that we'll worry about the information retrieval in a second. Then there's something called elaborative rehearsal. And that's a really complicated name for just spending time remembering things. Like when you study something, when you process something. Remember I've told you in class many times that the best way for you to remember things is not just read through the book or read through or listen and you know, just look at the PowerPoints later, but the best way is to take what I say and process it into your own sentences and put it in your notes in your own words, whether that be written or typed. Well, the reason for that is that is a type of elaborative rehearsal. You are processing the information, you're remembering the information, you're thinking about the information. And it is easier for that information to get into your long-term memory. And elaborative rehearsal is more of a, it can be a lot of different things, but it's more of a sort of like, I guess you could say, complex processing of the information. Okay? It could be just trying to remember it, it could be reading through it, lots of different stuff. But that's kind of what it is. All right? And then you get to the long-term memory. And the long-term memory is, think about it as a hard disk on a computer. Think about it as where everything is. It's just a memory store. Okay? The stuff is just sitting there and it can be retrieved. And the retrieval line that you see going on there means you retrieve it. And very much like a computer model, I mean, we've really we've modeled the computer after our own brain. And so what happens is it has a hard disk, it has RAM, random access memory, and that is memory, which is a processing memory. You can think of our short-term memory kind of like a processing memory. We are not computers, it's not the same thing. So the metaphor fails the more detailed you want to get with it. But at the same time, right, back off. I'm an angry pirate. Sent many souls to their watery grave. All right. Anyway, so speaking of short-term memory, sorry, I just had to. So speaking of short-term memory, so it kind of goes back into our short-term memory. Like if I say to you right now, think of the last argument you had with somebody. It could be your parents, brother, sister, whatever, friend. Okay, think of the last argument you had. All right, well, okay, now you're thinking of the last argument you had. And you hadn't been thinking of that argument before I mentioned it, probably, but you were able to access it. You just go access argument files, bring that argument, you pull it up in your short-term memory, and then it's active in your short-term memory again. And so then anyway, after we're done talking about it now, you're gonna forget it and it's gonna go back into your long-term memory. It doesn't really go back. It's not like a file you've pulled up, but it's just, nobody really knows how that process works. But you get the idea, and that's kind of the idea here. Okay? Information retrieval, that's when you just bring the information and you say it somewhere else. It goes out to the world around you. Like if I ask you to tell me about that memory, okay, you retrieve it and you tell me about it, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what the graph is about. It's an oversimplification for sure of the memory process, but it's a start point. And what you'll see is this was a start point for all memory. I guess, yeah, let's just say it that way. I think that's the safest thing to say, is that this is a starting point for all memory research. We've improved it because there's weaknesses with it, which I'll talk about as we go on. But this was a starting point, for sure. Okay? And so, anyway, so let's move on here to the next one here. The Multistore Memory Model, we will refer to it as MSM, Multistore Memory Model. And Multistore Model, however, just put the M's and the S's like you want. It's proposed by these guys, Atkinson and Shiffrin. These are huge names in psychology. Atkinson and Shiffrin, they've written lots of books and professors, very well known. Very often, the experiments you do will be modeled after these guys. Very, very big names. Ones just you'll see again and again popping up. The Multistore Memory Model consists of 3 memory stores. I talked about it already, and so I'll go over this a little bit quicker. But sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory, we will refer to them as SM, and we won't refer to that much. Sensory memory, STM, short-term memory, LTM, long-term memory. We'll just kind of refer to it as those. Henceforth, the stones shall be known as STM and LTM, respectively. Thank you. Okay? All right. Okay, now. Sensory memory, it's kind of what I just said. It's a storage system that holds information. You can read through this in the PowerPoint. I don't want to read through the whole ones there. Duration, it decays rapidly. Capacity, nobody really knows, seems to be unlimited, but it decays rapidly. We don't use it. It's nothing which you're cognitively really aware of. Like I said, you just kind of go around and look at it. Coding information is picked up by our senses and stored in this form. Iconic, visual information enters the visual store. Echoic, that's sound stuff. Auditory information is handled by the auditory sensory store. Haptic information picked up in the sense of touch. So we just kind of go around, it helps us navigate our environment, but it's not really much more significant than that. Sure, anything that we attend to has to come through our senses and sensory memory, but it doesn't really have any ability to manipulate things. It's just kind of a process. So as for psychology is concerned, as for our experiments are concerned, as for really the sort of problems that are caused by and the idiosyncrasies caused the things about memory which are interesting for psychology, none of it has to do with sensory memory. So just kind of mentioning what it is more than really talking about its significance, because I mean there's some significance, but it's really not that significant in this situation. Okay, short-term memory. Now this is where it becomes interesting, and these things you have to know. You will know them because, you know, like I talk about schema theory, or like I talk about neurotransmitters, and we know what they are now. You will know what this is. It just takes time to learn the terms. And so a limited capacity memory system for storing information that's limited. This is important, and this is the difference between LTM and STM. Atkinson and Schifrin see short-term memory as a temporary storage depot for incoming information after it receives and encodes information from the sensory memory. It's temporary. That's how they see it. Yes. And I don't think anybody debates the temporary nature of short-term memory. Even you know, this is 68, this is 50 years ago, this model, 52 years ago even, 53 even, whatever, it's older. Nobody's really debating the fact that it's short-term memory store and it's a limited capacity. That's pretty much, we've nailed that one. And so anyway, short-term memory store, its duration is between 15 and 30 seconds. This is important stuff for you to remember. Its capacity is limited to 7 plus or 2 units, plus or minus 2 units. That means generally an average person can't really remember more than 9 things in a row. If I give you 9 numbers in a row and ask you to remember them, 2, 9, 4, 2, 6, 5, 3, 1, 7, 18, 14, 6, 11. Now, you won't be able to remember all those. Some people lose track about 5, some people lose track about 9, but you won't be able to keep them in your short-term memory. And if I start talking about something else in the meantime, like, I don't know, the news or whatever, then that erases that short-term memory and it's gone. So we have that short-term memory store. Like I said before when I was talking, that's why we like to repeat the numbers, because we keep repeating numbers in our head so it stays fresh in the short-term memory, because we have not had time to encode it to the long-term memory. Coding is acoustically. This is badly, this is another experiment, okay? Information is lost unless it's rehearsed. So I was just saying. So the encoding is very much acoustic. Even if you look at it on the page, you actually say the number yourself. You have a phone number to remember, or whatever, whatever, some numbers. Like a code to Amazon gift card, whatever. Okay? You say the numbers. And yeah, anyway, even if you're just reading it. So that's just one of these acoustic things. Remember, we're going to work more with these things. These are just kind of the details of these things, or the, I guess, yeah, details, whatever, the characteristics of these memory stores. And we're going to talk more about them specifically when we get into experiments. All right? All right, anyway. So, long-term memory. It holds a vast quantity of information which can be stored for long periods of time. Basically a lifetime, okay? Information kept here is diverse and wide-ranging, including all of our personal memories, general knowledge and beliefs about the world, plans for the future, and where our knowledge about skills and expertise is. This is simply what we think of as our memory. Everything. Everything. You know, you could say your memory is your personality. And if you were to lose all your memories, would you even still be you? which is an interesting philosophical question you can ponder upon. Would you be you if your memories were erased? I don't know. Probably not. Anyway, and so, you know, when we talk about things like people like Clive Baring, I mean, is he even himself anymore? Okay, so long-term memory continued. Long-term memory, the duration is long-lasting, perhaps for a lifetime. Proposed that it could last, this guy proposed that it could last for 48 years. This one always makes me laugh. It's like, after 48 years, they disappear. I don't know. It's like 40, oh, this one's 49 years old, you got kicked out. Boom. Best before date ended last year. Get out of here. You can't even remember a whole year of your life because you're like, I don't know, you're 57, so you can no longer remember when you were like 8. Anyway, so whatever the case is, it's just silly. But the capacity seems to be unlimited. Nobody's ever, oh, I can't remember anymore. Oh, sorry, got to get that one out of there. What do I want to get rid of? I need to make it from space. This is where the metaphor between a computer thing fails. I mean, maybe a computer with unlimited storage, maybe cloud computers, that's where we're going. We're going to the cloud. Our personalities will be uploaded sometime. The end of biological dependence. Anyway, science fiction aside, coding, primarily semantic. Now, do you guys remember what semantic means? Maybe not. It's the meaning of things. It's semantics. What does it mean? What does something mean? You know, your car is on empty. What does that mean? Well, it means you need some gas. It means you're going to run out. It means you'll end up walking. It means all kinds of stuff. It means all kinds of stuff. But your long-term memory is basically a semantic thing, not acoustic. It's about the meaning of things. And we'll talk more about that because semantic memory becomes very, very important in later models. Like we remember things better because we remember them semantically. But these are different. This is called levels of processing model, which we'll talk about in the future. Not today. Coding, primarily semantic, but also acoustic and visual. It can happen different ways, like you remember a song. You know, why do you remember a song? This is interesting. Like, you know, if I say Deck the Halls, everybody knows that song. You can just do that. Well, how do you remember that? How do you reproduce that? And so it's just, it's an acoustic memory. It just is encoded. But mostly it's semantic, okay? Information in the long-term store can also be recalled via retrieval. We can bring back information. So when you're taking a test or something, and you're supposed to do a math cut thing, or you're supposed to remember what happened during a certain time in the Civil War, or whatever the case is, you know, these are all parts of your memory retrieval. So this is it. And it's really, what I'm saying is not very necessarily complicated because I mean, obviously we know we retrieve our memory. Okay? And so with that, I need to get back to battle. I've been talking in enough scholastic nonsense long enough. Now it's time for me to do something else. I gotta get the bloody French, and the bloody British, and the bloody Spanish. I need to send them to their watery graves. First, even though I like to complain about them, it's time for another ballad. That's right, sing it, lads. Sing it. Off I go to battle. Yar!